You are listening to the International Radio Report. Your reactions are much appreciated. Feel free to send them to radioreport@yahoo.com. That is, radioreport@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, November the 6th, 2022. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, and you are tuned to CKUT Radio 90.3 FM in Montreal. It's our weekly half hour of news and information from the world of radio for you. If you'd like to reach us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. Our program's live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group is International Radio Report. We welcome Kent and Daniel this week, bringing us to 858 members. We invite you to go and join the Facebook group for more information about the stories here on the show and other stories that don't make it to the air. And we have our YouTube channel, which is also International Radio Report. You can find it at youtube.com/@IRR, and we have 719 subscribers there. And you'll find our show each week posted up there, and previous shows that you might like to go back and listen to as well. So this week we have a lot of information from pretty much all North American news, which doesn't happen often. We usually have some international stories to go along. It is the International Radio Report after all, but this time we'll focus on some items going on here in North America. And Gilles, you've started off with a Canadian story.
Yep, there's a Canadian expansion for HD Radio, and this is via Radio Inc. HD Radio developer Xperi has announced it has expanded into Canada through Pattison Media's conversion to HD Radio. Pattison Media is Canada's largest Western-based media company, covering British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba with 48 stations. The adoption of HD Radio in Canada will begin with the Vancouver-based 102.7 FM channel. Our switch to HD Radio technology means that Canadian listeners of Pattison stations, starting with 102.7 in Vancouver, can now benefit from superior audio quality and a wealth of content choices with relevant imagery and metadata that elevates their in-vehicle radio experience, making it more immersive and engaging, says Pattison Media President Rod Schween. HD Radio technology system for AM and FM radio stations broadcasts a digital signal over traditional radio frequencies, allowing for up to 3 additional channels of new audio programming and resulting in broader reach. Pattison Media continues to blaze new trails in Canadian broadcasting, and this partnership furthers HD Radio Technology's ability to offer more Canadians the best possible radio listening experience, says Jeff Jury, Xperi Senior VP and General Manager, Connected Car Division. Jury noted the number of stations in Canada that have converted to HD radio technology doubled during the pandemic. We are proud to be at the forefront of radio's transition to digital and innovative solutions, helping consumers not just in Canada, but around the world have an extraordinary listening experience. There is hope for something that, for a long time, we're seeing more of a decline than anything else. HD radio in North America got a big start when it actually started, but it faded slowly. Stations are slowly removing themselves from HD radio, and I've seen it. I've seen it as I have a SNG and HDR14, and I could see that some of the AM stations, particularly in the evening, a lot of them, the HD signal trigger is not there anymore, so they turned it off. But at least, I don't know, does this mean there's a future for HD radio finally? We'll see.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, this means something to us because we monitor what goes on in the radio field. Yeah. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Pattison Group promotes this. We know that you have to go get a radio to do this. What does the general public know about HD radio, and how will the companies and the stations promote this to their listeners? I don't listen to CJD here in Montreal, so I don't know when they talk about being on HD. Do they ever say, well, this is how you find us? I don't know. I kind of doubt that they're doing anything like that.
Just look at the 103.3 station I listen to. It is an HD station. It has an HD country station also on HD2. The thing is, I never, ever heard them talk about that. They don't advertise it. They don't say 103.3 FM in HD. And
Very, very
a
odd.
lot of stations are like that, and I'm wondering, okay, someone that listens to CJAD decides, oh, they're in HD, I'm going to get an HD radio. You do have to know that you don't have to tune 800 anymore. You have to tune 107.3. That also is not very clear.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing and advertising and promotion that needs to be done, not just by the stations that are doing it, but by somebody, who's maybe going to want to sell these radios.
Yeah.
Our listeners, I'm sure most of them know what this is all about, and they know they need a radio, but the general public, I'm not so sure about that. Next, another story comes to us from Radio Inc. 60 artists join effort to tax radio. On Tuesday, Music First announced that more than 60 artists, creators, and activists have signed a letter urging Congress to pass the American Music Fairness Act, which would force radio stations to pay for the music it airs. The letter's signatories include some pretty famous names: Cyndi Lauper, Gloria Estefan, Hanson, Peter Frampton, Jackson Browne, Sammy Hagar, Pat Benatar, Sheila E., Dan Aykroyd, Deanna Carter, Rick Springfield, Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, Sam Moore, the Indigo Girls, Chris Difford, Ricky Minor, John Cicada, and BB Winans. The radio industry fights this new tax battle every year and has to start over every time there's a new set of elected lawmakers, which will be the case after the election this year. The radio industry believes airing music for free is a fair trade-off with artists because they are able to reach the biggest audiences, and they are more likely to become successful when their music is played on traditional radio. Current artists with hits on the charts today, not from the 80s, consistently thank radio at their live shows for playing their music. Very few, if any, current performers have signed on to the Music First plan. This Music Fairness Awareness Month and beyond, we're proud to stand with artists in their honorable fight to finally get to the compensation they deserve for the use of their work on AM and FM radio, said Congressman Joe Crowley, chairman of the Music First Coalition. Big radio corporations like iHeart make billions of dollars in profit by filling their airwaves with music, and it's only right that they should pay a fair share to the artists whose hard work makes their whole business possible. It's just common sense. Artists support the American Music Fairness Act. The American public supports the American Music Fairness Act, and now it's time for Congress to make it law. The legislation was introduced in the House by Representatives Ted Deutsch, a Democrat from Florida, and Darrell Issa, a Republican from California, in June 2021, and received companion legislation in the Senate last month from Senators Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee and Alex Padilla of California. It calls for radio stations to have to pay artists directly, and in addition to paying pros for the music they play on their radio stations. The whole music scene has changed. People don't buy music the way they used to. Artists don't release albums the way they used to. There's so many different ways to access music other than the radio. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I think, as it says, the radio stations think that it's a fair exchange. We play your music on the radio. People get to hear it, so they go buy your music if they like it. But is that actually happening?
Yeah, the thing is, I remember as a teenager what I would do: listen to the radio and fill up some tapes of my music that I was playing, hoping the DJ doesn't talk too much at the beginning. That period of time, I could understand that. I'm sure there was a fair number of people that made tapes, never bought anything.
Right.
They were happy with that. And I remember there was a battle about that back in the day of, we should have royalties taken off of the sale of 4-track cassettes.
It's artists that have been around for quite a long time that are going after this, where maybe their music is not as popular, not being played as much as it was in the past, replaced by newer artists. So And the newer artists don't seem to be asking for this or supporting it. So
The big problem is the complete ecosystem of music distribution is now so different. The glory days of going to buy an expensive CD or vinyl that gave them a lot more money are kind of gone. And today people don't rarely, I would guess, buy a full album of an artist.
what surprises me, you'll hear, maybe or see a TV commercial or hear something about a new album by an
Yeah.
artist coming out. The day it's announced, you can go on YouTube and the whole album is there already.
Yep.
Someone has put it up there already. So our people, people love free stuff. They're, if they can
Definitely.
get it for free, they're not going to go pay for it.
So Sirius XM revenue increases 4% in the third quarter of 2022. This is via Radio Inc. Talking about, making money off of content. Well, with $2.28 billion in the third quarter of 2022, Sirius XM's revenue was up 4% compared to the third quarter of 2021. The company recorded net income of $247 million compared to $343 million in 2021. Gross profit of at SiriusXM totaled $1.1 billion, an increase of 6% compared to the 2021 period, producing a gross margin of 62%, roughly a point higher than the prior year period. SiriusXM ended the third quarter of 2022 with 32.2 million self-pay subscribers. During the third quarter of 2022, self-pay subscriptions increased by 187,000, aided by a growing base of streaming-only subscribers. Paid promotional subscribers decreased by 49,000, and total subscribers were 34.2 million as of September 30th, 2022. The free SiriusXM trial program stood at approximately 7 million at the end of the quarter, down from 7.3 million at the end of the second quarter of 2022, reflecting weaker auto sales during the quarter. This is interesting. They are able to go get subscribers, definitely. I mean, they lure you with these ads. So they definitely are working hard at getting people there. There is something interesting. I was talking to you about how unique content.
No, that's for sure. And I mean, they talk about the subscriptions by streaming only. There's a whole bank of extra channels that are
Yep.
only available on the streaming that you can't get if you have the Sirius XM in your car or a home radio. So they have offered. I mean, I often tell people, if you can't find something to listen to on Sirius XM, then I don't know, you should move to another planet or something, where there's some kind of other form of radio entertainment, because they've got everything covered, absolutely everything covered, and such tiny little unique niche markets that they
Definitely.
happen to have a channel for. So and they've been very aggressive at getting the radios into cars. They've even got a deal now with used car dealerships, where if there's a radio sitting in the used car, they will automatically activate it for like a 3-month period. It's much like cell phones were at the beginning, that once they've given it to you for nothing and let you try it out, you get hooked on it.
Yep.
That's kind of the way Sirius has been operating, and they've been very effective with that type of approach. So it's not surprising to see the numbers. I remember people, when I got mine, 15 years ago, maybe now, people are never going to pay for radio. People kept telling me, well, it seems right now that, what is it? What's the number? 32.2 million people self-pay subscribers, not to mention the freebies that are out there, another 7 million in the trial program. So yeah, it's been extremely successful for them.
So what's happening with our sun this week? We started the week with quiet conditions. Things were pretty good. And then a solar wind stream from a coronal hole started messing things up, creating at moments up to G1 geomagnetic storming. And so as we're recording, we're still in that fast stream of the solar wind. What's going to happen in the week ahead? Well, we have right now a few sunspots, but things are very quiet. The sunspot number is 65. The solar flux around 125. Rather quiet conditions probably because nothing much happening. There's no real coronal hole for the week ahead right now. So we're probably going to go back to quiet conditions unless some new sunspot appears quickly. So conditions overall not bad at all for this time of year, and definitely worth turning on the radio and listen.
This is Glenn Hauser, on the air since 1987. You're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of radio about radio, every Sunday morning on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal, and live streaming around the globe at ckut.ca.
We have some rather surprising news, I guess, from Radio Insight by Lance Venta. Scott Shannon to retire from WCBS FM mornings. I think anybody who follows radio, AM and FM radio in particular, probably has come across the name of Scott Shannon. After waking up New York listeners for nearly 4 decades, Scott Shannon told his listeners this week that he will retire from Odyssey Classics Hits 101.1 WCBS FM in New York on Friday, December the 16th. After already a long career in top 40 at stations like WMPS Memphis, WMAK Nashville, WQXI in Atlanta, WPGC Washington, D.C., it would be the morning zoo developed by Shannon and Cleveland Wheeler at Q105 WRBQ Tampa that would be cloned at stations all over the world and played a major part in the top 40 boom in the 1980s, played in part by Shannon's arrival in New York to launch Z100 WHTZ or WHTZ in August of 1983. After leaving Z100 in 1989, he attempted to replicate its success in Los Angeles with Rock 40 pirate radio KQLZ. Returning to New York in 1991, Shannon quickly rebranded WPLJ as Mojo Radio in an attempt to go after Z100. That would then give way to what was at first a very 1970s-centric hot AC format, emphasizing the WPLJ call letters. Tom Pettengill joined the station at the time as Shannon's morning co-host, a pairing that would last through Shannon's exit in February 2014. Shannon would join WCBS FM a couple weeks later, where he has been since. Shannon will continue to anchor the syndicated True Oldies channel and his weekly America's Greatest Hits show. So I remember hearing about Scott Shannon, I should say, many, many years ago. And I think he's written books on formatting radio stations, and really developed this whole top 40 scene. And WPLJ was just a monster of a radio station for many, many years, and a lot of that had to do with Scott Shannon. Why he's retiring now, it doesn't really say. He's still at a peak. It's a top-rated morning show in New York City on WCBS FM. It's
kind of interesting because when I was reading this article and seeing how long he's been there and the top 40 stuff, I don't know why in my head another name came to my head as Casey Kasem that we'd hear for such a long time on the radio for top 40 stuff.
I kind of wonder if he might be being offered something somewhere down the road, and he's just sort of taking a break, December, Christmas period, kind of go away for a little bit and then maybe resurface somewhere else. A lot of longtime DJs that have left their analog stations have ended up at Sirius.
Yeah.
There's a lot of well-known names that are broadcasting there now, so it kind of makes me wonder. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this, that maybe come the new year, we may see him popping up somewhere else.
That's possible. Day after Halloween, what happens? Well, there's a Chicago radio station that flips to all-day Christmas music. This via Chicago's NBC Channel 5 TV. When is the right time to begin playing Christmas music? A Chicago radio station is betting it's earlier than you might think. On Tuesday, the day after Halloween, 93.9 Light FM will flip the switch on all-day Christmas music to get Chicagoans into the holiday spirit. The station announced that its around-the-clock Christmas playlist began at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 1st, and that's even earlier than in past years. "We heard our listeners loud and clear," said Mick Lee, 93.9 Light FM program director and afternoon show host, in a statement. Said the day after Halloween, the listeners are ready to hear Christmas music. "As we change our colors from orange and black to red and green, Chicagoans will be sure to get in a festive mood with nonstop holiday music. We can't wait to make new memories with our listeners and their family in our 22nd year as Chicago's Christmas music station. Last year, Chicago's 93.9 Light FM switched to holiday tunes beginning at 4:05 p.m. on November the 3rd. In 2020, they started playing holiday music nonstop on November 6th. To spread holiday cheer during the pandemic."
It's always a scary time of the year when this happens, and it just makes me think of, well, we're going to get that long a period of Christmas music, but it's also telling you that Christmas is really not that far off already.
Yeah.
So it's kind of torn between not wanting this to happen and then knowing that when it does happen, it's a trigger to start thinking that it's coming.
Well, who else flipped to Christmas music? This is also via Radio Inc. Among the flippers to an all-Christmas music format this past Tuesday were Cumulus's WWIZ-FM in Youngstown, Ohio, iHeart's WMAG-FM in Greensboro, North Carolina, Bonneville's KOSI-FM in Denver, and Horizon Broadcasting KWPK-FM in Bend, Oregon. SiriusXM also launched 22 holiday-themed channels. So, hey, you can listen to Christmas music until...
The Sirius XM, I always take a scan through their channels, their Christmas channels every year, because they do get very creative. And like I said before in the story, they do these little niche market channels. And they come up with some pretty bizarre, channels for Christmas music. So if you've got Sirius, you might want to check it out. Maybe not just yet. I don't want to hear any of this stuff in the month of November. As you said, I think December would be enough. But commercial radio stations have said that this is their biggest revenue generating period of the year when they switch over. What a lot of stations do is they give a whole bunch of their staff time off. Like, we don't need you right now because it's all canned music, it's just going to be playing, and it's advertising, really pushing people to go out and spend money on Christmas. So avoid it if you can, but it's going to be hard. We'll get hit with it here in Montreal soon, I would imagine.
For sure.
There's usually a couple stations that make the move, usually sometime in November. So we'll probably have some news about that in the near future.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests, but just before that, we have the passing of a website that was quite popular and interesting on ham radio.
Yeah, we received this news via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio from Mike Terry in the UK. Some of you have heard us refer to it, and maybe you check it out yourself, something called the Southgate Amateur Radio News. And it's a website which we noticed was offline for a while. There hadn't been any updates for a while, and then just in the last few days, the site went down completely. Well, Mike Terry reports sad news. Richard Brunton, G4TUT from Raleigh, Essex in the UK, passed away after a fall at his home on October the 21st. Richard was the editor of the popular Southgate Amateur Radio News website, which is now offline. There have been no new posts since October the 8th. The site had a daily digest of amateur radio news items with some broadcast radio and space news thrown into the mix as well. It must have been a huge amount of time to trawl various websites and collate all of the information on a daily basis. Southgate Amateur Radio news items were then in turn the source of news for many other radio sites. So thanks to Mike for passing that along. I had no idea that this site was actually based in the UK.
Yeah, same here.
Richard Brunton, the webmaster and the editor of all of this material, I don't think I ever saw his name mentioned on the site. Mm-hmm. So, but we certainly used it for material for our show. I know our ham column editor in the CIDX Messenger, Eric Cottrell, used it for a lot of material for his column, and I reported this to him this week. So he was quite upset to hear that news as well. So whether anybody might pick this up down the road, I don't know. 77 years old. We were talking before the show that, this sort of thing is happening in a number of different fields where people that are aging and have been doing things for so long, suddenly either they retire or worse, as in this case, and these resources go by the wayside.
Yeah, it is sad. That website had so much information. It's going to be missed, that's for sure.
Ham radio contests and events. We hope some of you enjoyed the worldwide CQ contest last weekend. It was very busy on the bands, lots of interesting stations on. This week, though, we have quite a lot of contests coming up for you, starting with the Worked All Europe DX Contest, RTTY edition. 0100 Zulu November 12th to 2359 Zulu November 13th. It's organized by the Deutsche Amateur Radio Club. The bands are 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz, and it's an RTTY only contest.
We have the 1010 Fall Contest, digital, 01 Zulu November 12th to 2359 Zulu November 13th, organized by the 1010 International Group. The band is 10 meters only, and all digital modes are accepted.
Over in Japan, the Japan International DX Phone Contest is happening, 0700 November 12th to 1300 Zulu November 13th, organized by the Japanese International DX Club. 160 through 10 meter bands are being used, no work bands, and it is a phone or SSB contest.
The Straight Key Century Club Weekend Sprintathon is from 12 hours Zulu November 12th to 2359 Zulu November 13th. The bands are 160 through 10. No work bands mode is CW.
The Czech Radio Club is organizing the OK/OM DX Contest CW. 1200 Zulu November 12th to 1200 Zulu November 13th, 160 through 10 meter bands, no work bands, and it is CW.
And this one is always interesting. The CQWE, or Western Electric Contest, 1900 Zulu November 12th to 05 Zulu November 14th. Objective: to contact as many radio amateurs as possible who currently work for, did work for, or are retired from any part of the Bell system, or any company that was created from the separated parts of what was once the Bell system. This includes AT&T, Bell Labs, and Western Electric, local phone companies, and many other companies that were part of the Bell system. Bands 160 through 70 centimeters, so it goes up to the VHF, UHF, CW, phone, and digital.
Yeah, a lot of people, I'm sure, who worked for any one or number of those companies that are ham operators will hopefully be out and on the air. And it's not just for them to contact each other, but any hams are welcome to contact them during that event.
So we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in this week. If you have any interesting stories, please feel free to pass them along to us, or you can post them up on our Facebook group if you like. And we always like to hear from our listeners. You can join the Facebook group by simply going to International Radio Report on Facebook, click the Join This Group icon, and join in the fun with all the other members of the group. That will do it for us. Have a great week, and tune in next Sunday morning for the next edition of our show, the International Radio Report, on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Bye-bye.
Heralding Christ Jesus' blessings from Quito, Ecuador. This is HCJB, the voice of the Andes. We're now opening our morning broadcast in English to Europe on 11730 kilohertz in the 25 meter band. The time here in Quito is 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the same as 0700 hours UTC.